Alright, now that we have all the confirmed info about what types of stats work on Memosprites and what doesn't, after rechecking my whole script couple of times, here's my full build guide for Aglaea. And as always, we first start with a brief explanation of her kit, followed by her Eidolons, some build options, proper rotations, and finally, synergies. So leave a like if you find this video helpful, and let's get started. Let's talk about lootbar.gg, the best top-up platform for your favorite games like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and now Zenless Zone Zero. It provides some crazy discounts on every item there is, and it's super easy to use. Just go to lootbar.gg, select Honkai Star Rail, or whatever game you play. Select your preferred pack, and then type your UID, select your server, and click on top up now. With just a few clicks, you can get your hands on some awesome deals. Lootbar also has tons of positive reviews, and all the purchase is done through official whoever's routing channels, making it a super safe option. Not only that, some of your favorite content creators, including me, uses Lootbar for every in-game purchase. So just click on the link in the description or in the pinned comment and check out lootbar.gg right now. So Aglaea. She's a lightning unit following the path of Remembrance, and is our first 5-star Remembrance DPS. Her Memosprite is called Garment Maker, and her overall playstyle is basically taking as many turns as possible with a stacking speed buff. Looking at her base stats, all of her stats are pretty much average to low, except for her base attack, which is a bit on the higher end, and her energy cost, which is a whopping 350, meaning she has the current highest energy cost ultimate. For her traces, her basic attack deals lightning damage to a single enemy, the normal stuff, but she also has an enhanced basic attack, which I'll discuss in a bit. For her skill, is the usual skill for Remembrance units, like the RMC. If her Memosprite Garment Maker is present on the field, then she heals their HP. If they are not, then she summons them and allows them to take a turn instantly. This instant turn only works if the Memosprite is summoned. Now for her talent, her Memosprite Garment Maker gains 35% of Aglaea's speed, and this is shown at the stat window. And if Aglaea gains a speed buff in the middle of the battle, that will not be counted towards this 35%. All the base stats for the Memosprites are calculated before the battle starts. Only buffs that specifically mentions that they will work on Memosprite will work on them. The Garment Maker also gains a percentage of Aglaea's HP, and while Garment Maker is on the field, Aglaea's every attack will inflict the Seam Stitch effect to the target, and when attacking the enemy with the Seam Stitch effect, that attack will further deal additional lightning damage to that target. And the additional damage is not damage boost, it's a separate damage multiplier. Also, Seam Stitch only affects the most recent target, that means it cannot be applied to multiple targets at once. Now for her ultimate, she summons her Memosprite Garment Maker, and if they are already on the field, then she heals them. After that, Aglaea enters the Supreme Stance state and immediately takes action. While in this state, Aglaea gains the speed boost stack from her Memosprite, which I'll discuss in their own section. But basically, at max, she can gain 6 stacks, and here each stack increases her own speed by 15% at max level. And this is super insane, because let's say you have the standard 134 speed on your Aglaea. At max stacks of the speed buff, your Aglaea will be over 250 speed, which is a lot. Apart from this, her basic attack also gets enhanced, and she cannot use her skill. Also, in this state, her Memosprite Garment Maker is immune to any type of crowd control debuffs. Lastly, a countdown appears on the action order, which has a fixed speed of 100, giving it an action value of 100. And this works just like Firefly's or Robin's ultimate. You have all the buffs until the countdown takes turn. The moment its turn begins, Aglaea will lose her Supreme Stance state, and her Garment Maker will also self-destruct, meaning you have to summon it again. But there is also one extra thing here, which was not in Firefly or Robin's kit. Here, if you can use her ultimate before the countdown takes turn, you can actually reset the countdown's action value. But that would mean filling up a 350 energy cost ultimate in a single cycle, which is impossible without external supports. And even with them, it's extremely hard to do. Now after her ultimate, we can now look at her enhanced basic attack, where both Aglaea and her Memosprite unleashes a joint attack, dealing blast damage to 3 targets. And a joint attack means Aglaea will deal blast attack to 3 targets, and then her Memosprite will also deal a blast attack to those 3 targets. The former will be based on Aglaea's stats, and the latter will be based on the Garment Maker stats. Also, this basic attack will not generate any skill points. Lastly, her technique is an attack that will trigger the battle. At the start, she will summon her Memosprite and then deal lightning damage to all enemies. Also, she will apply the Seam Stitch effect to a single random target. Now for her Memosprite Traces. First is the skill, which is basically a blast attack targeting 3 enemies. For the talent, after attacking any enemy with the Seam Stitch effect, Garment Maker will have their speed increased by a flat 55 at max level, and this can stack up to 6 times. And at max stacks, this buff alone will add 330 speed to Garment Maker's base speed. So this Memosprite will have a speed of over 350, which will make it insanely fast. Also, this is a speed buff stack that gets applied to Aglaea in her ultimate state, but in her case, each stack increases her speed by 15%. Also, whenever the Garment Maker takes turn, it will always use its skill, the blast attack, and will prioritize enemies with the Seam Stitch effect. Lastly, we have 2 extra passives. First, when Garment Maker is summoned, their action advances by 100%, and this happens every time, may it be Aglaea's skill, or her ultimate, or even the technique. It doesn't matter how you summon it, every time Garment Maker is summoned, it immediately gets a 100% action advance. For the second passive, whenever the Garment Maker disappears, meaning if it dies, or if the countdown of Aglaea's ultimate takes turn, and the Garment Maker self-destructs, it will regenerate 20 energy for Aglaea, which will help with her insanely high 350 energy cost ultimate. Now for her trace priority, as a main DPS, there isn't just a single option. The first, I'll recommend Aglaea's basic attack, her ultimate, and the Memosprite talent all together. All three are the most important aspects of Aglaea's whole kit. Both her ultimate and the Memosprite talent provides the massive speed buff, and the enhanced basic attack is Aglaea's highest damage ability. Next, you can level up her talent and the Memosprite skill, and lastly her own skill, as it only heals and nothing else. Moving on to Aglaea's passives, her first passive, while in the Supreme Stand state, increases Aglaea's and Garment Maker's attack by 720% of Aglaea's speed, plus 360% of the Garment Maker's speed. So just for a simple calculation, let's say Aglaea has 134 speed in her stats outside of battle, which will give the Garment Maker a base speed of around 47. And if you add a full stack of speed buffs for both Garment Maker and Aglaea inside her ultimate, the overall speed of Aglaea will be over 250 and the Garment Maker's speed will be around 370. And if we calculate the attack buff, we are looking at an attack boost of over 3000. So a pretty big increase in damage. Her second passive, when Garment Maker disappears, up to one stack of speed boost from their talent can be retained, and when Garment Maker is summoned again, they gain the corresponding number of speed boost stacks, which basically means even if Garment Maker dies, their speed stack will never go down to 0. They will always have at least one stack of speed boost, even after they are summoned back. Lastly, her third passive. At the start of the battle, if Aglaea's energy is lower than 50%, regenerates her energy until 50%, which is a worthless passive for all the major endgame modes, as you always start the battle with 50% energy on all your units. But any other type of game modes, like in the Sim universe, you get to take full benefit of this passive. For her bonus stats, after maxing out her traces, Aglaea gains 22.4% lightning damage boost, 12% crit rate, and 12.5% defense. I would have preferred a damage stat like attack or speed, but this defense does make her a bit tanky, so that she doesn't get one-shotted. Finally, it's time for her Eidolons. Aglaea's E1. Enemies inflicted with Sim Stage effect take 15% increased damage, and after Aglaea or Garment Maker attacks this target, Aglaea additionally regenerates 20 energy. Okay, this is kinda broken. We get this kind of effect in other units, but it's only like 3 or 5 energy. Getting 20 energy is insane, but it's also needed for someone with a 350 cost ultimate. And I'm gonna say this here, if you don't have Sunday, I personally don't recommend pulling for Aglaea. But still, if you really like her design, then I highly recommend at least getting her E1. This totally solves her energy issues, and the need for units like Sunday, or Tingyun, or even Ho-Ho. Her E2, when Aglaea or Garment Maker takes action, the damage dealt by Aglaea and the Garment Maker ignores 40% of their defense. This effect can stack up to 3 times, and lasts until any unit other than Aglaea or Garment Maker actively uses an ability. So this might not be as insane outside of her ultimate, as you won't always be able to get max 3 stacks of it, but in her ultimate, where she has an enhanced attack, where both she and her Memosprite attacks at the same time, and with her insane speed, you can easily max out the defense ignore percentage, and get the total 42% def ignore on every one of her attacks. Aglaea's E4, the speed boost effect from the Memosprite talent, has its max stack limit increased by 1. So now it's 7 stack in total, and this will also work for Aglaea's speed boost stacks from her ultimate. And with this, the Garment Maker at max stacks can go beyond 400 speed, and Aglaea at max 7 stacks can go above 270 speed. Also, after Aglaea uses an attack, Garment Maker can also gain speed boost effect from the Memosprite talent, basically helping them get to max 7 stacks faster. Lastly, her E6. While Aglaea is in a Supreme Stand state, increases her and the Garment Maker's lightning rest penetration by 20%. Also, when Aglaea or Garment Maker's speed is greater than 160, 240 or 320, damage dealt by the joint attack is increased by 10%, 30% or 60% respectively. Pretty much the more speed you have, the more damage you deal with Aglaea's enhanced basic attack. Pretty good, but not as broken of an E6 like some other units. Overall, aside from her E1, every other one of her Eidolons have a steady increase in damage. They are great, but does not hold that much value aside from just damage increase. But her E1 though, completely changes her kit. It solves her most important issue, that is energy, making her a lot more consistent. And with that, you may also be able to keep her ultimate active all the time, by using her ultimate before the countdown takes turn, again and again. And on top of that, it also increases her damage. So definitely worth it to go for her E1. In fact, I would highly recommend pulling for her E1, and you'll definitely have a way easier and fun time playing her. By the way, if you're enjoying the content, please consider subscribing, as it does help this channel grow and motivates me to make more content for you guys. Now to her build, and we start with her Lightcone options. Her signature, Time Woven into Gold, is obviously her best in slot. It gives 12 speed, which is really helpful, as speed not only increases her turn, which then results in more attacks, but it also helps generate more energy. And also, more speed means a bigger attack increase from her first passive. This Lightcone also provides a very huge crit damage boost, which makes her super easy to build, as she does not get any major crit buffs from her traces except the 12% crit rate boost from her bonus stats. As a result, it's pretty hard to get a good crit ratio on her, which you'll see when I discuss her stats. But this Lightcone helps with that. And lastly, it also provides a huge basic attack damage boost, and Aglaea's basic attack is a major source of damage. For alternatives, there are two 4-star options. One is from the Battle Pass and one is Gacha. Sweat now, cry less. The Battle Pass Lightcone is the second best option if you can get more copies of it, which will take some time. But this perfectly synergizes with Aglaea's kit. It gives crit rate, which helps with the overall stats, and it increases all type damage. This is definitely a great option if you don't have her signature. The other 4-star is Genius's Greetings, a Gacha Lightcone. This one can slightly outperform the Battle Pass Lightcone, but only if you can achieve a good crit ratio on your Aglaea through relic substats alone. As I've already said, building a good crit ratio on Aglaea is going to be hard, which is why the Battle Pass Lightcone is so good for her. But if you're lucky enough to get good relic pieces, then the attack boost and the basic attack damage boost does provide some awesome numbers. Lastly, we have the 3-star option, Reminiscence. This is basically the closest F2P option that you can get. Even though it has a very low base attack, since Aglaea gets so much attack from her passives, you don't require high base attack that much, and because of which, a 48% damage dealt increase can be insanely great for Aglaea. In fact, this 3-star Lightcone is actually super close to the 4-star Gacha Lightcone, Genius's Greetings. Their overall difference in performance is pretty low, so much so that if you can get a decent crit ratio on your Aglaea, then this 3-star Lightcone can perform just as good as the 4-star. Here's a chart showing the overall damage difference across all the Lightcones I mentioned. Please note that Lightcone calculations aren't always as accurate as actual in-game numbers, and that seems to be the case especially for Aglaea, as her signature is far better than what I've shown in this chart. The extra speed increase is better than it looks. With the help of other supports, this can allow her to use her ultimate more often, resulting in more damage. For comparisons between her E1 and her signature, well, it depends. Her E1 is more valuable than her signature in my opinion. If you look at single instance damage output, her signature does have the edge, and it makes her easier to build. But if you don't have Sunday, then the 20 energy gain is just way too good to pass up. All in all, if you have Sunday, go for her signature. If not, then go for her E1. Now to her relics. There are two sets that can be used on Aglaea. One is new and one is super old. The newly added Hero of the Triumphant Song set is just made for her. It increases attack, it increases speed, and it increases crit damage, all of which Aglaea needs. But this is still a brand new set, so if you still don't have good pieces of it, then you can just use the very old Musketeer set. This also gives attack, speed, and basic attack damage, so until you get some good pieces of the new set, you can use this. For ornaments, the best in slot now is going to be the banana set. It gives 16% crit damage at base, and then some more crit damage if you have someone on the field. But the second part only works on Aglaea. As I've already said, Memosprite only takes base stats from their masters. Any extra buffs that are gained in battle does not work on the Memosprite, unless it's specifically mentioned that the passive will work on both the unit and their Memosprites, which in this case is not. But this is the only set that I would recommend right now. You can also use other sets like the Izumo set if you play her with the RMC, or even the Rutalin Arena set can also work. But these also fall under the same category, where the second part of the passive only works on the unit and not on their Memosprites. For stats, here's a build for reference. Everything here is calculated with F2P Lightcones, which in this case is the 3-star Lightcone Reminiscence, and the lowest of relic substats. For main stats, use a crit damage or crit rate body depending on what your build needs. Always use a speed boot, as speed is the main focus of our kit. Use a lightning damage sphere, and depending on your situations and teams, use an attack or ERR rope. If you have supports like Sunday or have her E1, then I recommend using the attack rope. But otherwise, an ERR rope will make her much easier to handle. You can still use an attack percentage rope even without Sunday, but it will make getting her ultimate back super hard, which can result in a lot of downtime. For stats, aim for at least 60 to 70% crit rate and around 150 to 180 crit damage, with the standard 134 speed. You can try to go even higher speed as she wants to be fast, but the next speed break point for her ultimate is like over 250 speed, which is unrealistic. I'll explain this part in the rotation section, so just aim for that 134 sweet spot and focus the rest of the stats on crit. Now for her rotations, which basically in her case, let's understand her ultimate a bit better, and how many turns does Aglaea and her Memosprite can take while under the Supreme Stand state, which basically means how many enhanced basic attack can she use in this state. So for that, first we need to calculate their speed inside her ultimate. So let's say your Aglaea has a speed of 134 in her build, and since her Memosprite takes 35% of Aglaea's speed, their speed becomes 46.9. Now let's add the speed buff stacks. The Memosprite gains speed stack when they attack an enemy with the Seam Stretch effect, with the max stacks being 6, and inside Aglaea's ultimate, which is the supreme stand state, Aglaea inherits these stacks. But these stacks have different effects for both Aglaea and her Memosprite. For Aglaea, each stack increases her speed by 15%, and for her Memosprite, each stack adds 55 flat speed to their base speed. Keep in mind these numbers are based on max level traces. So with the full 6 stacks of speed buffs added, Aglaea's speed becomes 254 and her Memosprite Common Maker reaches 376. Now the ultimate countdown that appears in the action order has a speed of 100, giving it an action value of 100. So given this info, we can now see how many turns can Aglaea and her Memosprite take before the countdown. Here you can see the specific action orders. Aglaea takes her first turn at 0 action value, and she gets an extra turn just like Firefly when she uses her ultimate. Then she takes 2 more turns before the countdown. So with this, Aglaea gets to use 3 enhanced basic attack. As for her Memosprite, they take their first turn at 0 action value, as they get a 100% action advance right after they are summoned. Then they take 3 more turns before the countdown. Now if the Common Maker is already on the field, then the 100% action advance for them will not happen, and in that case, the first turn at 0 action value will not occur. So all in all, in a single Aglaea ultimate cycle, Aglaea takes 3 turns, resulting in 3 enhanced basic attack, and the Common Maker takes 3 to 4 turns, and this is without any type of action advance from supports like Sunday. Having those supports can help getting a few more turns, but from just speed tuning, you can only get 3 turns, because to get 4 turns inside your ultimate, you would need over 250 base speed on your Aglaea. And as I said in the stats section, getting that much speed just from relics and supports is unrealistic. Finally, her synergies. Now the one thing that pretty much every theory crafter would say is that if you want to experience the full potential of Aglaea, then you need Sunday. It's that simple. It's a team-based game and you need Sunday to make a proper Aglaea team. Without him, you won't feel the same impact from Aglaea. So only pull for her if you have Sunday or you plan to get him in his rerun. So with that finished, let's discuss her teams. Aglaea is a hyper carry DPS. So a normal Aglaea team will have her with a hyper carry buffer, a secondary support or debuffer, and a sustain. Starting with the hyper carry buffer, there are 3 options here. The best is Sunday, obviously. Not only can he action advance both Aglaea and her Memosprite, which is the single most broken support for a Remember His damage dealer like Aglaea. But with that, he also provides crit damage, helps with skill points, and most of all energy, which Aglaea really needs. Just as I said earlier, Sunday currently is the one key to unlock Aglaea's full potential. Other units for the support role are Tingyun and Robin. Similar to Sunday, Robin can also action advance the Memosprites, but is not as frequent as Sunday, as it is tied to her ultimate. But regardless of that, the other buffs that she provides, like damage boost and a huge attack boost, are all very useful. As for Tingyun, if you don't have Sunday, using Tingyun in your team is a must in my opinion. She provides a ton of energy with extra attack boost. Since she's a 4-star, she doesn't have that much to offer, but for a super energy hungry unit like Aglaea, the extra energy from Tingyun becomes invaluable. Next, for the debuffer or a secondary support role, we have 2 options. First is Pella, who can inflict AoE defense down onto the enemies, but the best is going to be the new RMC. Even without his AoE crit damage boost and action advance, both of which are great abilities, the one thing that makes him super valuable is his true damage buff. I've already made countless videos explaining why this true damage buff is so broken. But in short, it provides one of the biggest damage increases than any other type of buffs. So definitely a must-have teammate for Aglaea. Lastly, for the sustain slot, we have a few options. Normally, it wouldn't make much of a difference no matter which sustain you choose, as long as they provide either energy from their kit or can use the quid pro quo Lightcones. So units like Huho will be great with Aglaea, as they can provide energy. But if you don't have her, then a Lingsha or Gallagher with the quid pro quo Lightcone is going to be your best option. All in all, a proper Aglaea team would look something like this. Aglaea being the main DPS, with 2 other supports or debuffers and a sustain. Honestly, you can pick any 2 of these supports and use them with Aglaea. But some notable ones aside from Sunday are going to be the RMC and Tingyun, who is especially important if you either do not have Sunday or Aglaea E1, and that's everything. Overall, Aglaea is a pretty strong main DPS. As our first Remembrance damage dealer, she does bring out some big numbers. One thing I'd say about her is that Aglaea is not someone like the Herta with big nukes. You won't see one big damage number. Her strength lies in her constant heavy hitting basic attacks. With her super high speed, combined with her Memosprite, she will be attacking constantly, kinda like a follow-up attack DPS. But she also has her issues like having such a high energy cost and are reliant on Sunday. But that does not make her unplayable. If you like her character, then you need Sunday in your account, or you should try to get her E1. That will make her much more fun to play. And that is going to be it for this Aglaea guide. There are still a lot of complications and confusion regarding the Memosprite mechanics, but I hope this guide helped in understanding her kit properly. If you have any further questions, leave them in the comments and I'll try my best to answer them. Like and sub if you enjoy my content. Thanks a lot for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one.